Coming up on this edition of Pinpoint Weather University, we're talking to a warning coordination meteorologist with the National Hurricane Center about how they communicate threats during hurricane season. Our meteorologist, Andrew Brightman, sitting down with that warning coordination meteorologist. It's a great discussion. You want to stick around for that, and I'm also going to be talking about what we can expect for this hurricane season and why El Nino shouldn't have you letting your guard down. Plus, it's my favorite weekend of all time. Let me put myself on camera for this. It's Coke 600 weekend, baby! Yeah, Charlotte Motor Speedway in action. Super excited. Cannot wait. Been going as a kid since I was a little boy, but we do have some weather in the way. Detail some of the forecast updates on that. Feels good to be back, my friends. This episode of Pinpoint Weather University, you know when it starts in 3, 2, 1, down. Welcome into Pinpoint Weather University. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Man, here on Queen City News Plus and on Pinpoint Weather University. This episode, man, it feels good to be so back. Last week, I was down and out with a stomach virus. Still kind of struggling a little bit. I'll spare you the details, but man, it feels good to even just be back in our building here at Queen City News, hanging out with my buddies and coworkers here at the station. Super excited to be back. Excited to be back with you as well. And my social media has been really exploding this week because of Charlotte Motor Speedway and the race forecast. WS Brandon Dodd at WS Brandon Dodd on X and on IG. I appreciate you tapping in with me on there, and I will continue to answer some questions on that throughout the week. But I've also got a little Coke 600 forecast type thing for you at the end of today's episode. But first, we've got to start out in the Atlantic Ocean. Hurricane season is starting soon. It starts June 1st. National Hurricane Center, NOAA, they're going to be releasing their projections for the upcoming hurricane season on Thursday, May 21st. So it's coming up. Those projections are coming up. And I will be honest with you, I am expecting NOAA to release a projection of near normal or below normal in regards to what they're expecting for tropical activity. We've seen a lot of hurricane forecasts already. Colorado State University, NC State has put out their forecast, and all of them are projecting below normal or maybe near normal tropical conditions. And the big reason why is because of El Nino. Now, first off, before I get into all of this, the National Hurricane Center, they're already forecasting for hurricane season here for the Atlantic Basin. Now, the hurricane season, again, doesn't start till June 1st, but the National Hurricane Center gets ahead of things about 2 weeks ahead of time. I believe May 15th. Don't quote me on the exact date, but that is when they start their actual hurricane forecast for the upcoming hurricane season, because sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes before June 1st, you can get a tropical system. Again, it's very rare, but you have to forecast for it because the conditions are right for maybe a potential tropical system to form. Now, I want to point something out. Social media, man, it is one of those things where you just have to be careful what you look at. There's a little swirl off the eastern U.S. coastline, and it's right in here. I'm going to put my cursor over it. You can kind of see me with my cursor right in here. There's that little swirl off of the eastern U.S. coastline. That is not a developing tropical system. That is what we call a TUTT. T-U-T-T. T-U-T-T. A TUTT is what we call that in meteorology. That obviously stands for something. It stands for a tropical upper tropospheric trough. And it is a very mouthful type phrase to mention, but the mouthful phrase is essentially telling you that nothing's happening with this thing. It's an upper level low, folks. It's an area of low pressure that's actually above our heads that has formed out in the Atlantic Basin. And essentially, with tropical systems, they're at the surface, right? They're surface low pressure centers. They're warm core systems that form and strengthen over warm ocean waters. This right here that we're looking at is an area of upper level circulation, an area of low pressure, again, above our heads in the upper levels, that's essentially formed over the Atlantic Basin, but it's a cold core system. I mean, you don't have the warm core features that you'd have at the surface with the actual tropical system itself. So that TUTT essentially is an upper level trough just off the coastline. I put the dots there. The dots are essentially showing us that this is an elongated upper level trough just off the coast. And you can kind of see how there's other clusters of storms that are developing further south as that trough extends further south and east. So again, that is what that is. It's no threat in regards to tropical systems. Now, it can produce rain chances, which I think it will for the eastern U.S., at least the coastline of the Carolinas, as we go into the Memorial Day weekend. It'll bring some moisture to increase rain chances, and a front being nearby also doesn't help. So that is what a TUTT is. That is what a that is what a TUTT is. I've seen just a lot of conversations about it, and it's a fun little feature to talk about, and it's just kind of a good explainer, especially for our show, Pinpoint Weather University. Again, we're in the business of teaching, telling you guys what's going on, telling you guys how it's happening, and that's what we have right here, a TUTT. It almost sounds like tuck, like the whole tuck rule. You go back to Tom Brady if you put a little sports in there, but it is what it is. Let's get to that thing here. Let's talk about hurricane season. Again, hurricane season, it starts on June 1st, and the projections from NOAA are coming out soon. And again, El Nino is what we're expecting for this hurricane season. And when you have an El Nino forecast, you tend to see below normal conditions. The big reason for that is because you have a high wind shear that forms out in the Atlantic from the warm Pacific Ocean waters there at the equatorial level there in the Pacific. Whenever you have a neutral El Nino and La Nina, which essentially means you're right in the middle of the two. You're not in El Nino or you're in La Nina. You tend to get near average. But whenever we're in a La Nina year, we tend to have above average hurricane and tropical conditions because La Nina means less wind shear. That means less tearing apart of hurricanes, and it gives hurricanes an opportunity to form and form at more of an adequate level. So let's show you the stats here. Let's show you a little bit of the headlines. Just looking at it. Hurricane season preview. Let's get into it. Less tropical activity expected for this year. That's been the way across the board. I expect that again with NOAA's projections. El Nino on the way. We've talked about it. It increases vertical wind shear, and that can limit the organization of hurricanes or tropical systems in general. But I want to note one thing. You're going to hear it a lot. One landfalling hurricane creates an active season. It just takes one. It just takes one hurricane to damage people's homes, take people's lives, and wreck a community for an active season. Gotta remember that. I always want people to know, it just takes one for an active hurricane season because it only takes one for massive impacts for us here in the U.S. or even in the Bahamas and up towards the Caribbean islands as you're getting down towards Jamaica, Puerto Rico, those spots. Even for them, a landfalling hurricane makes this an active season. Now, I want to point out, I'm not the biggest fan of tropical projections. Here's why. One, you have to prepare for the season regardless. If I tell you that there's going to be 14 punches, so I'll put it this way. Let's say I put on a blindfold. I don't have a blindfold, so I'll just use my phone and I just start punching blindly. I'm punching at you. I'm trying to hit you. If I tell you I'm getting 14 punches to come at you, 14 punches as an opportunity to hit you in the face, and I'm just jabbing. I can't see. I'm just jabbing at you. I get 14 punches. If I hit you in the face with two of those punches, with you in front of me, and I've got my blindfold, I hit you with two of those punches. That's gonna hurt. That's not gonna feel good, right? It's not gonna feel great. Now, let's say I put my blindfold on. I tell you, hey, I've got 7 punches. Boom, 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 boom. That was 7. Obviously, I'm hitting the camera. Sorry about fishing, you guys. I'm just trying to give you an example here. But again, let's say I have 7 punches. I'm still not going to feel great. I've got somebody punching at me. Now, if I tell you there's going to be 14 named tropical systems this year, I'm projecting 14 named storms. That's 14 opportunities for a landfalling hurricane. Now, could one form one day and then dissipate because it's out in the middle of nowhere in the Atlantic? It's still at wind shear, cold ocean temperatures. Sure, that's a possibility, but we don't know that yet, right? We don't know where these systems are going to form exactly at this time. Now, we know climatologically speaking when and where systems tend to form during the hurricane season, but you can't just rule out every possible location in the Atlantic to start the season. But again, that's why I wanted to use that punching example, because again, even if I tell you there's going to be 14 named storms, there's 14 opportunities. If I tell you there's 7 named storms, there's 7 opportunities for lives to be changed by a hurricane. So that's why I'm not the biggest fan when it comes down to hurricane projections. But it is important to talk about because it gives us an idea of how active the season could be, and it also gives you an idea of just how prepared you need to be. Now, you need to be prepared 100% regardless. probably should phrase that a little differently, but you should 110%, you should put preparation in. If I told you to be one name storm, I want you to prepare like there's going to be 14. But it gives you a little bit more of that. I think it just gives people an idea. Okay, yeah, I know this is going to be active. I need to be ready. You need to be ready with one, but one name storm, if you hear that, you don't want to let your guard down, which that's not going to be the projection. But still, I'm just trying to say, I think it either puts people's minds at ease when they see less, but it shouldn't. I think people just like to see the numbers and see just how active the hurricane season will be. But that's my whole spill on that. But first, let's get into the El Nino. So again, this is looking at the average temperature anomalies here of the global ocean areas. This just looks at April. So notice in April how much warmer than normal the water temperatures have been over the last 50 to 60 years. So you look back at the 1900 range, 1900, we had, below normal ocean water temperatures. Water temperatures across the globe were cooler than normal. Now you get to about 1950 and you get towards that industrial level of the range of the years here. And look at how much we've seen temperature spike. Recently we've been seeing our global ocean areas in the month of April. In the month of April, be about 1 degree Celsius above normal, and it gets higher as we get towards the later months into the hurricane season. The reason I'm showing you April is because we have 2026 on there, and look at where we are, 1 degree Celsius above normal. Now, when you factor in El Nino, this chart is looking at El Nino years versus La Nina years, and this is just looking at how above normal and below normal the Pacific can be. Right there at the equatorial, central, and eastern Pacific, where those water temperatures get warmer. That's where we're measuring the El Nino. And notice these big spikes here recently. So 1950, we'd have El Ninos. It get kind of strong, but look about, I'd say 2000 level. We start getting in here. And notice these big spikes. I mean, we're getting big spikes now. Whenever we see El Nino, it can be strong. And El Nino now is even worse for us because our globe is already warm as it is with human-induced climate change. But when you add El Nino to that, you're adding the latent heat, the warming from the Pacific Ocean to that already warm atmosphere. You're just warming it up even more. This is why with super El Ninos or very strong El Ninos, which is what we could potentially see this year, we end up seeing the hottest year on record. What does the hottest year on record do? It warms our oceans. So that's why I think even though we're going to have high wind shear, and even though El Nino years tend, not always, but tend to lead to less hurricane activity, this is why I think this year could be a little different. I think we could still see at least normal tropical conditions, even with the El Nino in store. I mean, look at sea surface temperatures now. We're in the month of May now, and look at sea surface temperatures about 1 to 4 degrees above normal. That's bad. It's bad. Not good. You shouldn't have sea surface temperatures that warm above normal here for the month of April and now, or for the month of May now. And now we're talking about summer heating up. Ocean temperatures are already ahead of where they should be. And now they're going to get even more ahead as we get into the summer months as we warm things up. So again, all this is to say, do not let your guard down during this hurricane season, because even with El Nino years, they could still be active. I think El Nino is getting a little bit overhyped this year. I think it's getting a lot of attention on social media. And again, it can change weather patterns, not just tropics. I've talked about on the show before how it can change weather patterns here in the U.S. as well. But I think people are just getting the clickbaits on social media about El Nino, and it's getting people thinking that hurricane season is just going to be a dud this year. And that's not always the case during El Nino events. 2023, pull it up for you. El Nino year right here, folks. 19 named storms. Now, did all of them make landfall? No. Matter of fact, it was actually a pretty, I don't want to say quiet, but it was a pretty tame season, other than Idalia making landfall right there in the Big Bend area of Florida, which is why it's an active season. Only takes one. And we had Ophelia that year too. And that one's right there close to us in Herald. So, again, guys, all I'm saying, just don't let your guard down just because we're in El Nino year. I'm going to toss the break because meteorologist Andrew Brightman is joining me on the show today. He is actually going to be interviewing a warning coordination meteorologist at the National Hurricane Center about how they communicate threats to the public. Speaking of not letting your guard down, That's a warning coordination meteorologist is going to tell you not to let your guard down as well. It's a good conversation with meteorologist Andrew Brightman. And again, National Hurricane Center warning coordination meteorologist on the other side of the break here on Pinpoint Weather University. Andrew on the other side. I'll join you at the end with your Coke 600 forecast.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to Pinpoint Weather University. I am meteorologist Andrew Brightman. I have a very special guest with me. I have Robbie Berg from the National Hurricane Center's warning coordination meteorologist. Robbie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
That's great. So am I. Thank you so much. And you are currently is this the Governor's Hurricane Conference right now?
Correct. Yeah, we're in West Palm Beach for the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference, which is done every year in the middle of May.
Awesome. So, yeah, we got the official start of hurricane season coming up in just a little over about 2.5, 3 weeks from now. First thing I want to ask you, Robbie, so as a warning coordination meteorologist, what are some of the important things that you do? I know many of the things are kind of communication, trying to communicate the different threats from the forecast from the National Hurricane Center to the public. What are some of your important roles here with the National Hurricane Center in terms of getting some of that information out?
Yeah, so the forecast doesn't end when we hit the send button and pump out all the products to the world. A lot of it is coordinating with other weather service offices. We coordinate with other countries in the Caribbean to make sure that their warnings are getting out. It's also making sure that the emergency managers, the media, and even the public are getting the message, understand the message, and are taking appropriate actions based on the forecast. As you get step closer in time to a potential threat, the decisions change, decisions can be difficult, and we're here to help them make those decisions.
Gotcha. And when you kind of go through that and communicating with the public, what are some of the communication disconnects that you run into from time to time? Obviously, talking to me, trained meteorologist, understanding what's going on. What are some of the different kind of issues you run into when you guys hit send on the forecast, but trying to accurately convey what that means to different agencies and the public?
I think there's two main trip ups that we often see people make. One is with the cone of uncertainty. That is the product that shows where the center of a storm may move over the next 5 days. And that's all it shows you is where the center may move and the uncertainty related around that. But we know that a lot of people often misinterpret that as being a hazard cone. In other words, if you're in the cone, you're at risk of the storm, the wind, the storm surge, and so forth. And if you're outside the cone, then you aren't at risk. And that's just not true. That's not how that product works. It's just where the center of the storm may go. The other thing that we often see people get a little bit tripped up on is when we categorize storms from 1 to 5. Really, all that's telling you is what are the strongest winds in the eye wall of the hurricane. It tells you nothing about the storm surge or the heavy rainfall or even the tornadoes with a storm. So having people understand that the Saffir-Simpson scale category is just kind of a quick way to understand what the strength of the storm is, but it really doesn't tell you the full story of what that storm can do.
Gotcha. Yeah, those are some of the big things that I kind of see with people as well. Is that one of the reasons last year you guys came up with a little bit of an experimental cone with it kind of emphasizing some of the impacts that it would see outside of that? Is the National Hurricane Center still doing that again for 2026?
Yes. In fact, that's becoming what we call operational this year. So now it's going to be a product that you will see every year from now on, is that we're not just depicting watches and warnings along the coast, but also depicting any type of wind watches or warnings well inland. If you take a storm like Hurricane Helene from 2 years ago, which we know caused very significant wind damage across the state of South Carolina, western North Carolina, there were watches and warnings out. And now what the cone will do is actually show those areas that are under those watches and warnings, which could fall outside of the cone boundaries itself.
Yeah, and that's really a big thing that we experienced so much with Helene a couple of years ago, was just seeing those really severe impacts so far away from the coast. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of talk about the potential of the super El Nino developing out in the Pacific Ocean and what that's going to do here potentially to this year's hurricane season. When you try to communicate with people, still could have an active season here, which is the overall change we've been seeing with the warming of the ocean. How do you try to talk about that with the different various agencies where it's, hey, this still could be an active season. Things have kind of been trending a little bit more active, even in these El Nino summers and falls that we're starting to see.
Yeah, but I think the first point there is that even if the strong El Nino develops, as some people are forecasting, there's often a lag between when that El Nino forms and when the activity in the Atlantic actually responds to that change. So even if it forms later in the summer or fall, the season may have gone through enough months where we don't actually see an effect of a decrease in activity. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that it can be a slow season number wise, and yet you can still have a major hurricane sneak through a window where the shear just happens to be lower. And if that happens near land, it could still be a bad season for somebody that gets affected by that storm. So there's kind of multiple factors that we're watching that even if it is forecast to be a slower season, that does not mean we're not at risk of still seeing hurricanes.
Yeah, absolutely, Robbie. And another thing I want to ask you about is you were talking about, the new cone being operational and talking about the impacts farther inland. How is the National Hurricane Center sort of doing, I guess, community and different agency engagement farther inland? Like you think of a place like South Carolina or North Carolina, you've got obviously you're engaging with the people in, let's say, Charleston, Myrtle Beach, Wilmington. Have you guys adjusted in terms of how you do outreach in places when you start to get up towards Columbia, Charlotte, Raleigh, or down in places like, let's say, Atlanta or Birmingham?
Yeah, so there's kind of multiple ways that we try to do outreach in inland areas. One is that it's not just us; it's really a team effort among the Weather Service, and so we have local offices in Raleigh, in Greer, South Carolina, in Atlanta, and we work with them to share hurricane information so that they can also go out and talk with communities about what hurricanes can do in their inland locations. Another thing that we've tried to do recently is we have what's called a hurricane awareness tour every year, where we bring the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft and the Air Force Hurricane Hunter aircraft to various cities in along the coastline so that people can see what these planes do to fly into storms and get us ready for the season. What we've been doing is trying to reach more inland locations and not just at the coast. So I know we've been in Raleigh for the Hurricane Awareness Tour a couple of times, and other inland locations like that. So we continue to plan to continue to do that because we know the hazards are not just a coastal problem, but can be inland as well.
Any chance you guys are going to do a trip to Charlotte for that?
We'll put it on the list. That'd be great to get to Charlotte one day.
Yeah, that would be awesome to have you guys come through Charlotte. I've always wanted to check out one of the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. It's just incredible what those storms can do here. Now, one graphic I'm going to pull up here is sort of the different lead times in terms of preparing for a storm that's on the way. What are some of the really important things to think about, kind of in that really critical, let's call it 3 to 5 day period before a storm is coming out, in terms of people that need to think? Because some people, they might panic, immediately evacuate, or how do the people really need to think about it in that kind of before that decision day, when you're kind of in that 3 to 5 day period, in terms of thinking about potential impacts, especially for an inland location like us here in the Charlotte area?
Yeah, so I think the key is don't panic. There's plenty of time to watch the storm. And I think the key is to listen to your local officials, because we're talking to them during a storm. We're providing the forecast and listening and helping them to make their decisions for what people in the public need to do. So don't freak out. People are looking at the situation and will have advice on what you should do. Now, for inland areas, luckily, you don't have to worry about evacuating for storm surge. I mean, that's our biggest concern along the coastline, is getting people out of the storm surge evacuation zones, because we do see a lot of people unfortunately lose their lives by drowning in that storm surge. So luckily, inland areas don't have to worry about that. That said, if you live near a river or a stream, and you know that those streams can overflow if you get a lot of heavy rainfall, there would be a chance you might have to do a last minute evacuation if we get a very heavy rain event. And again, I go back to Helene from 2 years ago in the mountains. That was one of those situations. So listen to your local officials, because they will have the best advice on what you should do to keep yourself and your family safe.
Yeah, and that's really great advice for that. So, Robbie, I really appreciate your time today joining us here on Pinpoint Weather University. Got just a couple more weeks here until the start of hurricane season. We're going to be following it very closely. Thank you so much for your time, Robbie, and have a good day.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. Again, we're going to see cars on the racetrack up in Concord, North Carolina, my hometown, at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and we got a forecast to get to. I'm not liking it. I don't like the chances for rain when it comes down to this weekend, but we're not looking at washouts here. The truck race, temperatures in the 70s, 40% chance of a delay. There's going to be storms in the afternoon on Friday. Do those storms slowly diminish as the evening goes on and as the sun sets over Charlotte Motor Speedway? Lower instability could create less storm coverage. That's why I'm giving only a 40% chance of a delay right now for the truck race, but that's still pretty high. O'Reilly Series race, 70% chance of a rain delay at this time. I think there's going to be a good amount of storms around Saturday afternoon. That race starts right in the peak heating hours of the late afternoon, early evening. I think it's going to be really hard for them to get their O'Reilly Series race without some sort of delay at all. Cup Series race, Cope 600 night. Biggest night of my life, really. I love this track and I love this race. And 50% chance of a delay at this time. There's going to be storms on Sunday. It's just a matter of where those waves and storms line up. And that's a little too far out to tell. But again, one thing I want to point out, scattered afternoon storms, delays possible, no washouts. No washouts is key here because, again, if we don't have any washouts, that could mean that we get the racing in this weekend for Memorial Day weekend. It just depends on when you're able to get those windows for dry conditions. Don't cancel your plans, folks. Again, this is Futurecast. This is showing the latest model data here on Wednesday, May 20th. Storms kick off on Thursday because the stall boundary moves in. You've got scattered storms on Friday. Again, don't take the timing completely with solidarity because this could change. But still, scattered storms Friday, scattered storms Saturday. But look at the rounds of showers and storms during the afternoon, evening. And then Sunday, I'm switching the model here because our bare and in-house model doesn't go out that far. This looks like a stormy Sunday evening. But I'm not seeing a lot of reds and oranges around, which means it could be more isolated storm coverage Sunday evening. Something we'll have to keep an eye on for you, and we will. Tune into us on Queen City News and also on our website, qcnews.com. We'll have updates on the race and also Memorial Day weekend, just in general, with all the events going on over there on our website and again on air at Queen City News. I'm meteorologist Brad Lawson, folks. Thanks for having me back this week. Gosh, it feels good to be back with you guys. As always, take care of yourself and each other to navigate this earth together. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.